My first contact with Buddhism was in Brighton. I was 17 when I first made contact with what we called the FWBO then. I'd actually been reading about Buddhism for about a year, maybe longer. From about 15 or 16 I discovered Buddhism in the books of Lama Govinda. I was really into Tibetan Buddhism, reading about Tibetan Buddhism. And I had a real longing to lead a spiritual life. I wanted a guru, I wanted a teacher, I wanted to be initiated into esoteric spiritual practices. I'd read Lama Govinda's The Way of the White Clouds and his account of his time with his lamas in Tibet, and I'd read his book Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism, and I didn't really understand it, but I thought, this is fantastic, this book, this is what it's all about. And but reading Govinda, he'd put so much emphasis on having a guru and meditation. I knew I had to find a guru to teach me meditation. So I was living outside of Brighton with my family, with my mum and dad. I'd left school, I'd been thrown out of school when I was about 16. And I was working as a gardener down the road. And this little village, there's no, you don't look in the yellow pages for Buddhism or anything like that. I didn't know where Buddhism would be, but I had this incredible longing to find a guru and to learn meditation. And one day I went to there was this hippie shop called Ananda, that's the way people pronounced it, Ananda, in North Street in Brighton. And I'd get incense there and Buddha images, and there were these posters that Tantra Designs put out of these reproductions of Tibetan tankas, and I used to collect them. When they came out, I'd buy them. So I was, had all this stuff in my bedroom, all these posters and books and all the rest of it. And one day I went to this shop, and there was a tiny little card, very small card, on the notice board, handwritten, saying the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, which I thought was an incredibly boring name. Really, I thought, well, they couldn't be proper Buddhists because they're friends of Western Buddhists, so they couldn't be the real thing. But anyway, it said the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order are thinking of starting a centre in Brighton for meditation, Buddhism, karate, yoga. If you're interested in finding out about this, and then it gave an address. And I was with a friend, and I said, we're going to that address right now. It was a Saturday afternoon. We're going to find out about these people, because I was desperate for a guru and to receive initiation, meditation instruction, and gain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. I kid you not, that is actually what I thought. Very naive, but I was 17. Anyway, so we went to this place, and there were these very nice people there, Jim and Deirdre Martin, husband and wife and their kids, and they invited us in, gave us tea, and it must have been sort of autumn time, because they were picking the apples on their trees, and they said, will you help us pick apples? So we went into their garden and picked apples, and they said, yes, there is somebody here called, I couldn't work out whether there was one or two people there who were Friends of the Western Buddhists, because they referred to Hugh and Buddhadasa. I subsequently found out that they were the same person. And Hugh Buddhadasa was on what they called an order day up in Purley, Aryatara. So they were saying all this. It was all rather strange sounding, but they were very nice people, and they said, just come back later on in the week. Come back on Wednesday or something. It was a Saturday. And you can meet him and you can learn about Buddhism and meditation. So I was really, really excited. I went home and I couldn't wait for the days to pass. I was going to work, I was coming home, but all the time I was thinking, come Wednesday, I'm going to meet my guru. I'm going to, there's a chance that I could actually gain enlightenment. That was the sort of way I was thinking, or something like that. And I was really hoping that he'd be wearing maroon robes, that he'd be a Tibetan Buddhist, and but it would be okay if he wore yellow robes, and he was another kind of Buddhist, you know, but that was all going through my mind. So the day came and I went there, and, you know, they gave me beans on toast for tea and everything. And then Buddhadasa appeared, and in many ways, at first, it was a real anticlimax, which is probably inevitable given the way I was building it up. I mean, he was just wearing a sort of brown sweater and jeans, and, you know, he was a young, well, Englishman, actually. Buddhadasa's Welsh, but anyway, I didn't know that then. And he was quite friendly. He shook my hand, said, well, you know, nice to meet you, but a bit kind of cool. And there was this feeling of sort of disappointment, really, that he wasn't a sort of, you know, Tibetan Buddhist and all the rest of it. And then we went into this room, which was these very nice people, Jim and Deirdre, had put over their front room. They turned it into a shrine room and library, you know, so lots of Buddhist books, and there was this shrine with nice rupas on it and all the rest of it, and the lights were down and the shrine was lit up with candles, and Buddhadasa explained the Padmavajra, not with an enormous elaborate, you know, not an elaborate gradual introduction, the whole 5-stage practice. So there am I trying to sit in full lotus, you know, in agony, trying to do this Padmavajra, you know, in all the stages, and not getting very far. But then that was immediately followed by a 7-fold puja, you know, with mantras at the end. And it was the puja that made the really big difference. I mean, by the end of the puja, especially when we were chanting the mantras, I knew that actually I was going to be a Buddhist. I knew that I was going to devote my life to the Dharma. I don't know how I knew that, but I just felt this exhilaration and this very straightforward joy that this was my language, this was my world, you know, this was what I was meant to be doing. And it was completely straightforward. That was it. There was no turning back from that. And within a very short time, I'd left my job. By that time, Buddhadasa had moved into a house down in another part of Brighton, which he was turning into a Buddhist centre and a small community. And I moved in, and that was it. That was it. Didn't look back.